So first, what are proteins? Well, proteins are very large, complex molecules that are essential to life. Protein is actually one of 3 macronutrients, the other 2 macronutrients being carbohydrates and fats. And macronutrients are nutrients that we need in large amounts because they're supplying energy, in contrast to micronutrients, which are nutrients like vitamins and minerals that we need in relatively, comparatively small amounts. So why do we need protein? Well, protein provides us with materials we need for body structure, components of body tissue, such as muscles, vital organs, bone, blood, skin, hair, and nails, all depend on protein. Protein is necessary for a lot of body functions as well. We make antibodies out of protein, and they protect the body from foreign invaders such as viruses and bacteria. We need protein to produce enzymes, which carry out thousands of chemical reactions in the cells. They help us to digest food. They assist with the formation of new molecules as well. Protein is needed to form chemical messengers, messenger proteins and hormones that transmit signals to coordinate biological processes between cells and tissues. We need protein for transport and storage within the body. Protein helps to carry atoms and small molecules within cells and throughout the body. And of course, we need protein during times of growth, because protein is needed for building tissues. And so we're talking about, during pregnancy, infancy, childhood, and adolescence specifically. And of course, we need protein for maintenance and body repair. So protein helps us to maintain and replace or repair cells as needed. And of course, we need protein for energy. So protein biochemistry is actually complicated, but we're going to try to make it as simple as possible. Proteins are composed of long chains of smaller units called amino acids. And these amino acids are linked together by peptide bonds. And you can see to the right this diagram of insulin. And you can see there are 2 chains, chain A with 21 amino acids and chain B with 30 amino acids that are all bound together to form this molecule called insulin. And there are literally hundreds of amino acids in nature, but there are only about 20 different types that are used to make proteins found in the human body and in most other life forms or forms of life. The sequence of these amino acids determines the 3-dimensional structure and the function of the protein. There are 3 classes of amino acids in human nutrition. The first being essential, or more technically termed indispensable amino acids. And these are amino acids that your body can't make. They have to be obtained from the diet. The second category or class of amino acids is what we call conditionally essential or conditionally indispensable amino acids. And these are amino acids that your body can make, but production can fall short in times of increased needs, like infancy, pregnancy, or when we're healing from a serious injury like a burn, or we have a disease. In these circumstances, some of the conditionally essential amino acids actually become essential. And the third category are the non-essential, or what we call dispensable amino acids. These are amino acids that your body can easily make in sufficient amounts, regardless of age or stage or state of health. Looking at the 9 that are indispensable, the indispensable or essential amino acids are histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. The 6 that are conditionally essential are arginine, cysteine, glutamine, glycine, proline, and tyrosine. And the 5 non-essential are alanine, asparagine, aspartic acid, glutamic acid, and serine. So the amino acid structure, all amino acids include this central carbon, this green carbon in the middle here. It's called the alpha carbon. They all include an amino group, which includes a nitrogen atom, and they all include an acid group, hence the name amino acid. So makes it pretty simple. Now, the other thing that all amino acids contain is this thing called a side chain or an R group. And the side chain or R group is what sets each amino acid apart. The amino acids are linked together with peptide bonds to become proteins. So let's move on to talking a little bit about protein quality. So for many years, the subject of protein quality evolved around the ability of dietary protein sources to meet human needs for metabolism, growth, and maintenance of body tissues. And this was essentially determined by 2 factors. Number 1, the essential amino acid content relative to human needs per gram of protein, and the digestibility of the essential amino acids in the food. Animal proteins were viewed as superior or complete or high quality proteins because they contain ample essential amino acids and they're highly digestible because they don't contain any fiber. Plant proteins were viewed as inferior or incomplete or low quality because some are low in 1 or more essential amino acids relative to human needs, and many have slightly lower digestibility because of their fiber content. But if we dare to look through a wider lens, what is often ignored in this discourse is that the food sources of high quality or so-called high quality proteins are associated with higher rates of mortality and chronic disease, while those considered low quality protein foods are associated often with much more favorable health outcomes. And we'll talk a lot more about this in a while. In addition, the so-called high-quality animal protein foods have a detrimental impact on the environment, leaving a much larger carbon footprint than the so-called low-quality plant protein foods. So we might want to ask ourselves, is it time to redefine protein quality? And I would say yes. I think we need to weave in the health and ecological impacts of various protein sources when considering how appropriate they are for humans. Protein quality, in my opinion, is a function of amino acid profile and digestibility or protein bioavailability, but it's also a function of protein's impact on morbidity and mortality, and its carbon footprint and environmental cost. When we look at standard tools for assessing amino acid profile and digestibility, we see that probably the 4 most commonly used are the PER, the protein efficiency ratio, the PDCAAS, or the protein digestibility corrected amino acid score, the DIAAS, which is the digestible indispensable amino acid score, and the TID, or the true ileal digestibility. And I just want to share a little bit about each one of these briefly. First, the protein efficiency ratio. This indicator of protein quality is actually based on a protein's ability to support the growth of baby rats. And rats are fur-bearing animals with high requirements for sulfur-containing amino acids, which of course are more concentrated in animal products. So PER often overestimates the value of animal protein sources and underestimates the value of plant protein sources, for humans who are not fur-bearing animals. The PCDAAS score is probably the most commonly used protein quality score. And it's based on how much protein and constituent amino acids go into the mouth and how much end up in the feces. And the difference was thought to be how much is actually absorbed by the body. There are two main criticisms of the PCDAAS score. One is that it was based on the testing of 2-year-old children who were recovering from malnutrition, and their physiology is different than healthy individuals. The second is that gut microorganisms actually use up some of the protein that gets into the large intestine. So the amount absorbed actually appears higher than what it actually is. Adjustments are made using weanling rats who double their weight in 3 weeks and have very different needs than humans. So again, it's not a perfect protein quality score. The DIAAS, this is based on feeding different foods to animals, usually pigs. A tube is inserted to the end of the small intestine, so it sort of bypasses that issue of the bacteria in the large intestine using up some of the protein. So the protein and amino acids absorbed by the animal prior to entering the colon are measured. And while a pig's metabolism is much closer to human metabolism than rats, pigs are generally fed raw grains and legumes. And humans cook these foods, which helps to break down cell walls and anti-nutrients and make the protein in these foods much more digestible. Hence, the DIAS score underestimates plant protein digestibility from plant foods in forms that are actually consumed by humans. And finally, the TID, or the true ileal digestibility, it's similar to the DIAAS. It uses a tube inserted into the end of the small intestine, and it uses pigs, chickens, or rats. But there is also limited research that has been done on humans looking at just a few protein sources. And when done using human foods, that is foods like legumes that would be cooked instead of eaten raw, as they might be with pigs, the absorption appears to vary by just a few percentage points among different foods. This measure, the TID, gives a much more accurate picture of protein digestibility from cooked plant foods, and it has really boosted our confidence that plant protein digestibility exceeds estimates based on the PER, the PCDAAS, and the DIAAS. So if we look at the RDA for essential amino acids, what I want you to notice here is we have recommendations for preschool children for each of the 9 essential amino acids. You can see it's just slightly lower during pregnancy than it is for a preschool child. It's still quite high though. Then for younger children, it's a little lower still than it is during pregnancy or for preschool children, and this is for 4 to 8-year-old children. For 9 to 18-year-olds, it varies a little more depending on the age and gender, but it's lower still. And then for adults, it's about 1/3 less than it is for preschool children. So you can see for histidine, it's 21 milligrams per kilogram for histidine, and for adults, it's 14 milligrams per kilogram. And then, of course, the question arises, can we actually get all the essential amino acids that we need from just eating plants? And the answer is absolutely. And here's what comes as the biggest surprise to people. Animals actually don't make essential amino acids. They're all made by plants. All plants contain all 9 essential amino acids. We get essential amino acids from plants either directly or indirectly. We get them directly by eating plants or indirectly by eating animals that ate plants. or of course, very indirectly by eating animals that ate other animals that ate plants. But the point being, they come from plants. So it makes no sense to say we can't get them from plants. Plants are where they come from. So of course we can get them from plants. Then the other question arises is, do people eating plant-based need to complement plant protein sources? And you probably remember way back when Frances Moore Lapay, when she developed some guidelines for plant-based eating, noticed and you know, she noticed that grains were low in lysine, and that, you know, some legumes were a little bit low in methionine and cysteine. So she thought, well, if we ate those two at the same meal, then we'd make sure we get the perfect complement of all essential amino acids. And that, of course, is true, that you would get a good complement of amino acids. But in fact, we don't need to, you know, with calculator in hand, make sure we're eating these two foods together. If we, and the reason it's unnecessary is, let's say you eat a bunch of grains at one meal and you have an excess of methionine and cysteine, those amino acids just get stored in amino acid pools in your body. And let's say the next meal, all you eat is a lentil soup and it's slightly low. I'm sorry, I should have said the grains are slightly low in lysine. And you know, you would store, they have extra methionine and cysteine, you would store that for later. And the legumes are slightly low in methionine and cysteine. And so you would just draw from that methionine and cysteine from the earlier meal. And so if you eat a variety of plants over the course of the day, and you're getting enough calories, you really don't have to worry about getting enough of the essential amino acids. Regularly including legumes is definitely key, though, because the amino acid most likely to be lacking, especially for children, is lysine. And especially if they're barely getting enough protein, then they may fall short in lysine. And kids tend to like eating, you know, starchy foods, pasta and bread and so forth. So they can easily fall a little bit short on lysine. So including those sources of legumes, whether, regardless of what form it's in, whether it's, you know, a combination of soy milk and pea soup and tofu and all of these things, it helps to ensure that they get all the amino acids, essential amino acids they need. So I just want to give you a sense of the essential amino acid pattern in foods. And so if you notice, there's a little key to the right here. So foods that are low for preschool children, that one amino acid is, or two, is low for preschool children. You'll see that amino acid highlighted with this sort of yellow box. And if it's low for both preschool children and adults, you'll see a red box around that amino acid. And so if we go over and look at wheat, you see that lysine has a red box around it. Now, this is the only amino acid that's low in wheat for preschoolers and or adults, but it's quite low. So it's 22 milligrams of lysine per gram of protein from wheat. And adults need about 38 milligrams of lysine per gram of protein, and preschool children need about 58. So let's say the only food you ate was wheat, that's all you had to eat, and you needed 50 grams of protein, and you just get 50 grams of protein. You would fall short in lysine. You would have to, if you were an adult, you would have to almost double your intake of wheat to ensure you get enough lysine. So let's say, you know, just throwing out a number, you needed 3 cups of wheat to get all your protein. You would need to double it to probably, you know, almost six cups to get enough if the only food you ate was wheat. But of course, the reality is nobody eats just wheat. We eat a variety of foods. Now, if we go over to the right here and look at pumpkin seeds, you can see that there are no essential amino acids in pumpkin seeds, that are low for adults. But there's one that is low for preschool children, and that is lysine at 41 milligrams per gram of protein. And so if children, all they ate was pumpkin seeds, they would need about maybe a third more or a quarter more of the seeds to meet their needs. Now, soybeans, you can see there are no amino acids that are lacking at all for adults. But for preschool children, methionine and cysteine is a little low. So they need 27 milligrams per gram of protein. 28 milligrams per gram of protein. And soybeans provide 27. So to put this into context, for if a child who was a toddler between 1 and 3 years of age got all their protein from soybeans, ate nothing else but soybeans, they would need to eat 6.5 tablespoons of soybeans a day to get enough protein. However, to get enough methionine and cysteine, they would need to eat closer to 7 tablespoons a day. So an extra 1/2 tablespoon of soybeans to meet their need for methionine and cysteine. So you can see that the difference is minuscule. And let's take a look at just a couple more foods, or 3 more foods. So quinoa, you can see nothing is missing for adults. Quinoa provides all the essential amino acids per gram of protein. But for preschool children, lysine is just a little low, about 4 milligrams per gram low. So they might need an extra 2 tablespoons or something of quinoa if that was the only food they were eating. Black beans, again, a little bit low in methionine and cysteine for preschoolers. What they need is 28 milligrams. It provides 26 per gram of protein. Very, very close. Now, almonds is a little bit of a different story. It's low in lysine and methionine cysteine for both adults and preschool children. So you can see that adults need about 19 milligrams per gram of methionine and cysteine and about 38 of lysine, and it's a little falls short on both counts. But you can see from this, if you're eating a variety of foods, you'll cover all of those bases pretty easily. So putting it into perspective, I just did some calculations, and if an adult's daily requirement is 60 grams of protein a day, they would get all the necessary essential amino acids by eating just one of these foods. 2 cups of soybeans, nothing else all day, just 2 cups of soybeans, or 4 cups of black beans, 1.5 cups of pumpkin seeds, or looking at animal products, 3/4 pound burger patties, or 10 eggs, or 8 cups of whole cow's milk. So you can see, comparing the plant foods to the animal foods, we need a fair bit of either to get enough protein. Now, looking at protein digestibility. Digestibility of protein is reduced by fiber, and fiber is present in all plant foods. That's probably the key, constituent of whole plant foods that interferes with protein bioavailability or digestibility, because fiber actually carries with it a small percent of protein from the food you're eating, and it goes right out in the feces. Some of it, of course, gets used by bacteria, but the rest goes out in the feces. Now, the other things that can impact protein digestibility are trypsin inhibitors. And trypsin inhibitors block the digestive action of the enzyme trypsin. And trypsin is the enzyme sort of at the upper part of the small intestine that breaks the long fragments of amino acids into smaller fragments so that they eventually get broken down into individual amino acids and absorbed into the bloodstream. And trypsin inhibitors block that action, so they block the breakdown of these amino acids so they can be absorbed. Trypsin inhibitors are found mainly in legumes and grains. The third is tannins. This is a type of polyphenolic compound found in tea. It is also found in smaller amounts in legumes, grains, cocoa, peas, nuts, and some leafy greens. Phytates, which are the main storage form of phosphorus in plants, Phytates are most concentrated in wheat bran, but it's also present in legumes and whole grains, so they can interfere or reduce protein digestibility. Lectins, which are proteins that bind to carbohydrates, they're mostly concentrated in raw legumes, but they're found in many foods. And then products of the Maillard reaction. So when you heat foods at a high temperature for a long period of time, it results in cross linkages in protein that can reduce the digestibility of protein by up to, and for lysine specifically, up to 30%. And so this is important to know. So if you're cooking foods, when you cook foods to a dark brown, for example, you're causing a lot more or a lot greater products of the Maillard reaction to form. And so you would be reducing protein digestibility more. Now, protein digestibility can be increased by breaking down fiber, by grinding, blending, or other food processing techniques that reduce the particle size. When fiber particle sizes are smaller, you allow for greater absorption of protein. You can also, of course, remove or reduce fiber through refining of foods. And then you can reduce or eliminate trypsin inhibitors and lectins by cooking. And so, who eats raw beans? Sometimes we sprout, lentils or peas or mung beans. But generally, those foods have fewer trypsin inhibitors and lectins to start with. And the soaking and sprouting will help to eliminate some, but cooking pretty much completely eliminates trypsin inhibitors and lectins.